Before we go any further, I like to show you what it actually means to have dependencies for useEffect. So over here you can see that I have created a state to hold the counter values, which are represented by counter with the initial value of 99. And I've also created a state called name, which has a function called setName, which will update the name state with the initial value of empty string. Now, what will happen if I put a console.log right now over here? Console.log, and I would go ahead and say useEffect, and I will remove anything over here. Let's go and check it out. So I'm going to go into the page, into the console, and you can see that when the page actually loaded, it fired useEffect. Now I will go into the increment function, which is handle increment click, and I will simply go ahead and update the state. So let's go ahead and update the state for the counter. Set counter, and I will take the initial state and I will add one more to it. Let's go back. useEffect is getting called for the first time when the page is loaded. That's fine. Let's go ahead and click on the increment button. Interesting. useEffect is getting called again and again. You can see right here it's actually getting called. So why is useEffect getting called? Well, useEffect is getting called because we are changing the state, which in this case is the counter state. I mean, it will also get called if you're changing the name state. Any kind of a state change, useEffect is going to get called. So this means if I go to this click handler for handle change name click, and I simply change the state for the name, set name, and pass in some sort of a name over there, then the useEffect is also going to get called because now we are updating the name state. So let's go back and I will say increment. You can see the useEffect is getting called right here. And I will say change name and useEffect again call. Now it's 2 times, right? So both of them, useEffect is getting called. So whenever the state is updated, whatever is in the body of useEffect gets called. So if we were performing some sort of a fetch request over here, it will perform a fetch request, go all the way to the network and come back with hopefully some results. Now, as I explained earlier on, the second argument of useEffect is a dependency array. This means that whatever state that you put in this dependency array, and if that state changes, then and only then the useEffect would get called, apart from getting called for the first time. So right now the array is empty. This means that if the state counter changes or name changes, useEffect will not get called. So let's go ahead and do that. Initially the useEffect is getting called because this is kind of like componented mount. I'm going to go ahead and press the increment button. You can see useEffect is not getting called, change name, and also useEffect is not getting called. What about if I put counter over here? Now what do you think will happen? So useEffect is going to get called when the page loads, that's a given, but then the useEffect, the body of the useEffect, which is all of this, is going to get called anytime the counter value changes, which only changes when I click on the counter button. So now let's go back, and you can see the useEffect is getting called because the page just loaded. And if I increment the counter, only on the increment counter, useEffect is getting called, not on the change name. So that's why that particular array is called the dependency array, and you pass in the dependencies, which indicates that useEffect will get called again when these dependencies changes, when this state changes. So if I go ahead and add name over here, then the useEffect body will get called anytime the counter changes or anytime the name changes. So that's it, and this is the dependencies in useEffect.